So I was playing Bowser's Fury recently, and I was looking at some of the buildings in the distance, and I honestly thought to myself, this game looks like shit, and I love it. Nintendo is one of the weirdest, most backward game companies in existence, and yet they're the golden child of gaming. They just do not give a single fuck about what is expected of AAA titles, or even from a hardware perspective. When Sony and Microsoft released the HD-ready PS3 and Xbox 360, Nintendo released a console called the fucking Wii, which was much less powerful, and you controlled it by waving your arms about like an idiot, and it sold better than both of them. And instead of upgrading the Switch to a more powerful version and fixing the Joy-Cons after the release of the PS5, they give it an OLED screen, upped the price by 50 quid, and called it a day. Nintendo is batshit crazy, and sometimes their risks go right down the toilet, but their non-conformity to the unspoken standards of modern mainstream gaming makes their games fucking amazing. I don't even want to know the level of genius they have working to design the actual mechanics of their games, but me and that company are kindred spirits in that we don't give a fuck about the exact same things. With their big releases, they really have it nailed down to a T. Graphically, they don't give a fuck about your 4K HDR RTX on lifelike protagonists. If you're using it in handheld mode, the Switch only plays in 720p, and it still looks fucking amazing. Bowser's Fury, Breath of the Wild, Pikmin, Metroid, they all look fucking excellent because they've got such a strong focus on a clean visual style over realism, and so they look great in any resolution. In 10 or 20 years, when we look back at current AAA games and think they look outdated, Nintendo's entries will still look amazingly timeless in comparison, in the same way Wind Waker still looks awesome even though it came out the same year as Morrowind. In a world where pro gamers are obsessed with spending their house deposit on a 3090 so they can get 200 FPS playing Minecraft for an audience of 10-year-olds, Breath of the Wild, which is arguably the Switch's biggest and best game, runs at 30 FPS if you're lucky, and no one gives a shit because they're having too much fun climbing shit and dressing up like a girl. They also don't give a fuck about long ass, boring ass, dumb ass games pretending to be movies. I love games with good narratives, but unfortunately in a lot of games they're overly generic and constantly feel like a barrier keeping me from what I want to do, which is playing the game. In current Nintendo games, you get a little cutscene and then you're playing the game within 5 minutes tops. The stories in their games aren't the deepest or most compelling narratives ever written, but it doesn't matter because Nintendo don't care, and neither do I. If they wanted to make a movie about Mario, they would make a movie about Mario because they're batshit crazy and there's no stopping them, and they know that games are for playing and movies are for watching. They still have a lot of humour and charm baked into every moment of their games, but it never feels like it's standing between me and the gameplay. Bowser Jr. famously said, "If it ain't fun, why bother?" And that quote resonates so powerfully through all of Nintendo's titles. In my admittedly short and limited time playing Nintendo games, there hasn't been an ounce of fat on any of them. Each game plays like a dream wrapped in a bouncy castle on a spaceship on your birthday. They have an unyielding focus on pure enjoyment, and no matter which game I play, I'm always sat there with a stupid grin on my face, simply having fun. There are no dumb mechanics like skill trees or overcomplicated crafting systems, no bullshit microtransactions or pointless DLC, and their games never outstay their welcome. Their target audience could be described as children, but the fact is they make games that can be enjoyed by any person of any age or skill level because they're so fine-tuned into the frequency of fun. Even though there are games I love more, their widespread appeal fused with pure quality means that when people ask me what game is the best, I say Breath of the Wild 9 times out of 10. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that Nintendo's willingness to take risks and go in its own direction makes it a breath of fresh air in an otherwise fetid pool of mainstream gaming. Their business practices are fucked up and their games never go on sale, but they make consistently amazing games that distill the pure essence of what games can and should be into packages of pure fun which leave lasting impressions on adults, whilst actually being the childhood of a lot of kids. They don't need the newest fancy graphics or amazing acting performances to sell their games. They sell so many of their games because they're fun to play. Thank you to Shigeru Miyamoto for being literally the greatest game developer of all time. Thank you to Samus for being such a badass, alone on an alien planet. And thank you for watching. Cheers.